Welcome back. This is session 2 of the podcast guesting masterclass, How to Deliver a Brand Strengthening Interview. My name is Margie Feltune. I am the CEO and co-owner of Interview Connections. Make sure if you didn't watch session 1, you watch the replay. I did the full intro of who I am and how I got here and the significance of podcast interviews. But I went from a contractor to being the business owner with no visibility, and then got visibility through podcast guesting and have seen incredible results. So not only does the service that we offer book our clients as guests, but Jess and I actively use this strategy for our own visibility and to get new clients for our own business. I would love to know, what was your biggest takeaway from yesterday's session? Yesterday's session was all about how to not waste time on the wrong shows. So how to understand the groundwork that you need to lay to make sure you understand what shows are a good fit for you and your goals and your target audience. So let us know in the chat, what was your biggest takeaway from yesterday?
Yes. And so while you're all sharing your takeaways, my name is Jessica Rhodes. I am the founder and co-owner here at Interview Connections. We are the leader in the podcast booking space. We have been booking entrepreneurs on targeted podcasts since 2013. So we are bringing you this week 8+ years of experience and tips and tricks that we've learned over the last 8+ years from booking our clients on interviews to you. The Interview Connections team is here to help you. So Margie and I are here on camera teaching you all week, but we do not run things on our own. We have an incredible team that is both serving you and serving our clients. So Sammy and Matt are in Zoom here today. They're in the chat, and they're also chatting with you over email, social media DM. So if you haven't heard from them, or if you don't know if Matt or Sammy is going to be your best friend this week, then make sure you email us at support@interviewconnections.com. Matt, why don't you say a quick hello if you have any important announcement for the people here? Take the time now to introduce yourself and share anything you need to share.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Matt. I know I've actually been in touch with a lot of you. I got some really great goals yesterday. I really enjoyed kind of pushing you guys further to think of how to be more clear with your goal, quantify it, like make it objective. I really enjoyed the conversations I had with some of you. If you haven't heard from me, Sammy, yet, definitely check your inboxes, email, social media. We connected you in some way, shape, or form, but shoot us an email if you haven't connected with us yet, so we can make sure we hear the goals from you and continue that conversation. So just excited to have everyone here.
Awesome. Sammy, why don't you say hello? Anything you want to share with our masterclass here?
Hello, hello. It's so nice to see everybody. I'm so excited for session 2. There's so many people already. I'm like, oh, we're in conversation. Great to see you here. And same as Matt said, the goals you guys are sending are so great. And we are just pushing you a little bit just so that we can get even more clear on those goals and help you reach them. So thank you guys so much for sending that over. If you haven't reached out to us yet, I put the email in the chat. I'll do it again. And happy day to everybody.
Yes. And we are live every day this week at noon Eastern time. So same time as right now, same Zoom link. We will be back with you tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. So make sure you mark your calendars. If you're not able to be here live, schedule in time to watch the replay, because what's scheduled in gets done. If it's not scheduled in, chances are other stuff is going to fill up your calendar, and the replays come down Sunday at midnight. So you definitely want to make sure you're here live and you schedule in time to watch the replays.
Yes. So we're seeing some great things in the comments from your takeaways. Keep them coming. Zoning in on who my dream client is and my goals for podcasting. Yes. That seems super basic, but it's a step that a lot of people skip. And it's so, so important. Understanding my primary goal for promoting podcasts. Okay. It may be the host that's your audience as well as their listeners. Yes. And we're going to talk a lot about that tomorrow, which is going to be the monetization session. So yesterday we taught you how to build a strong foundation so you don't waste time on the wrong shows. And your homework was to send your goals to either Matt or Sammy, whichever one is your concierge. So I know Matt and Sammy are talking about the goals they got. They're talking about pushing you to make them even more clear. So let me know in the chat who did their homework. Did you send your goals to Matt or Sammy? If you didn't do your homework, put in the chat when you are going to do that, because it's super important that you stay with us and you're in action. So not just absorbing information, but also in action, engaging, taking advantage of that support so that you get the most out of this class. Today, we're going to talk about how to deliver a brand strengthening interview so you can see how these sessions build on each other. Yesterday, we talked about how to identify the right shows. Today, we're talking about what do you say on those shows? So you're on the right show with a great host and a great audience for you. Now, how do you deliver an interview that's going to have impact? That's what we're going to talk about today. And then tomorrow, we're going to talk about how to close sales from podcast interviews. So how to directly monetize your interviews into clients for your business. There's a reason this is number 3, because you first have to be on the right shows. You second have to deliver a great interview, and then you can use those strategies to monetize, which we're going to talk about tomorrow.
Yes. And be sure to join us on Thursday. This is one of my favorite sessions because it is different every time because we have a panel. So the title is What I Discovered About Building a Legacy Brand as a Podcast Guest. And so you're going to be hearing from several of our clients here at Interview Connections who have increased their visibility, grown their businesses by being interviewed consistently on podcasts. So they'll be sharing their story. You'll be able to see, I know a big question is like, well, are there business owners like me who are using this strategy successfully? So you'll see a lot of different business owners share what they've learned and also their advice and recommendations for you as you're looking at how to implement this. And just remember, every session is recorded. The replays we're sending out via email and text. So if we don't have your phone number, you won't get a text from us. So you can send that to Matt or Sammy if you want to be getting text reminders. Check your email. Support at Interview Connections is where the emails come from. So if those are landing in your spam, make sure you mark those emails as coming from a friend so that you get our reminder emails as well as the emails that have the replay page. And the replays do come down Sunday at midnight. So this is a live masterclass. We're here with you all week, but then we take the replays down Sunday at midnight. So just make sure you schedule in time to catch up.
Sammy says, Mark, the email is coming from a best friend. Yes, Matt and Sammy are your best friends. They are here for you. So take advantage of that. All right, how to deliver a brand strengthening interview. This is both an art and a science. So we're going to give you some of the science, right? Some of the nuts and bolts and strategies. Definitely take notes during this session. But there's also an art to doing this, right? Because podcasts are conversations. They have to flow organically. There's a big improv piece to them. So we're going to prepare, we're going to have our topics and questions and our stories ready, but we're also going to need to be ready to go off course, right? We don't know where the conversation is going to go. And that's what makes them so powerful and so exciting. And that's the reason that you can go on 50 podcasts a year with the same topics and questions and have 50 totally different conversations, which is really exciting and really good for you, for your content, because you can repurpose that. But it's both an art and a science. And the most important part about the art aspect is you just develop it on the court. You cannot think your way to being great at being interviewed. You have to just get out and get interviewed. And we will give you all the tools in this masterclass to be ready to get out there and to get interviewed. And you just have to do it. And you will get better and better and better. Every year you're guesting on podcasts, you will get better at telling your story. You'll get better at being relaxed and speaking off the cuff and giving value. But I really want to impress that upon you because it can be so tempting to try and be perfect before you get visible, right? Or to make things so complicated and say, well, I can't do that. I'm too overwhelmed. But really, we're giving you the tools you need. This is everything you need. The rest is up to you. And it's really about taking that step in faith and getting out there. And you will get better and better. I promise you. And your first interview will be a lot better than you think it's going to be. So, number 1, sharing the real you. So to deliver a brand strengthening interview, and when I say brand strengthening, I mean that when people hear it, who have never heard of you or your business before, they're drawn to you. The right people, right? People who are not in alignment with you might be repelled by it, and that's good. That's what you want. But a brand strengthening interview is an interview where listeners hear it and they say, I need more of this person. I need to know more about their business. I need to follow them. I want to get in their ecosystem. I want to be a client of theirs. So it's strengthening your brand. It's humanizing your brand. The first part is sharing the real you. So podcasts are such an amazing space because it's such an opportunity for authenticity that might not be appropriate, or there's just not a space for it in a lot of other places. Podcast interviews are a safe space to really get vulnerable. And you don't have to share things that you're not comfortable sharing, right? It's a line that you walk. It's an art. You'll start to get the hang of it as you do it. But it is a safe space to be really honest. Be honest about your story. Be honest about mistakes you've made and what you've learned from them. The more that you do that, the more powerful it is. So sharing the real you, being authentic, that is what makes you a magnet to people who are aligned with you. Because when they just see your company's website and maybe a couple ads, maybe they're like, okay, yeah, I guess this is good. But when they get to know you as a person, who you truly are on a deep level, that will change everything. That is how you become a passion brand, where they are no longer price shopping. They're not comparing you to your competitors. They're saying you're the one, you're the person I want to work with. So sharing your unique story. So for me, I talk a lot about my story and my origin as a business owner. Losing my dad. I lost my dad to suicide. That massive loss was a huge transformation for me. And it led to so much of who I am now as a person and as a leader. I share that story all the time. I did not intend to share that story. I didn't intend to go on business podcasts and talk about grief and loss, but it just happened. And I realized that hosts were really interested in it. And I started getting messages from people saying how much it meant to them, sharing their story with me. I got so many people sharing their story that I ended up starting a podcast about grief and loss and interviewing high achievers. So it turned into this whole other thing because I was willing to really authentically share my story, my wins, my losses, my mistakes, what I had learned. And by doing that, I have clients who are now clients who were leads who heard me on a podcast and came and signed up with Interview Connections because they could tell that they could trust me. They could tell that a business I owned would have integrity and be in alignment with them because they were able to get to know me as a person by hearing me on the podcast. I also, as a direct result of being a guest on podcasts, I was featured in Forbes and I talked about grief and loss and the impact on entrepreneurs. This was not a topic that I planned. This was not on my original one sheet in 2018. It evolved very naturally. But when you share the real you, when you are authentic, that is a magnet for potential clients and referral partners and friends.
Yeah. So you have some beautiful comments in the chat. Thank you for sharing, Nicole. You know, your story, there are business owners that have a really clear turning point in their life, right? Something big happened. And then you may be sitting there saying, I don't know if I have that big thing. So do I have a story yet? Everyone here has a story that is worth sharing and that will be valuable to the right audience. So that's number one. Everyone here has a story. I get interviewed a lot about, being a mom business owner, right? Things like that. So everyone here has a story. And the more you get interviewed, the more clarity you get on what aspects of your story people find really valuable. So again, Margie's talking about getting on the court. Actually, you can't think through and you don't want to get stuck in analysis paralysis and what stories should I share? Because the only way to truly know what stories you have that are really valuable is to go out there and be interviewed and share stories and then hear the reaction.
Yeah.
Right.
I want to real quick, I did a panel about leadership in the nervous system. And that's a whole separate thing. But one of the things that Elizabeth Kristoff shared, who is an expert in the nervous system and how leaders can work with their nervous system and deflate their threat response so that they can be more effective personally and professionally. And one of the things she talked about is sometimes overwhelm and making things really complicated is actually a way for your brain to protect you. Because if it's really complicated, then you can't get started. And so you're protected from that perceived risk of actually putting yourself out there. And I found this really, really helpful. And I want to share it with you all now because that comes up when you get visible. It can feel very threatening to put yourself out there. So just see that in yourself. If you're making it complicated and saying, oh, I need to redo my website and have a landing page and get all the speaker training before I can get out there, are you making it more complicated than it needs to be to avoid the vulnerability and the fear about actually putting yourself out there? Because I acknowledge you fully. It is scary. It does take courage, but it also allows you to have a huge impact on others.
I just got to let that sit for a second because that also blew my mind when I heard it. And I'm seeing in the chat, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Wow. I am making it super complicated. Oh my gosh, Margie, that was worth $1,000 of therapy right there. That's amazing. Yeah. It's incredible. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about interview topics and questions because, we talked yesterday about the importance of having a podcast one sheet. So when you are getting booked on podcasts, that one sheet is a really important tool that's going to tell podcast hosts who you are, what you're an expert in, and it'll give them questions that they could ask you on their podcast. So this tool is really important to have. And oftentimes we get writer's block. We're like, what should my topics be? What should my questions be? And you want them to be interesting. So I'm going to walk through, this is going to be a writer downer section. So get your notes out. So I'm going to give you some prompts, some questions that are going to help you gain clarity on what potential interview topics could be, because it's not like this is my expertise, so my topic is going to be this. You really need to kind of do some reverse engineering to get really clear on what your unique value is and what you could be teaching. Okay. So I'll put these in the chat as well after I go through them. What are the biggest breakthroughs you help your clients to achieve? That's a really actually super helpful journal prompt just to build up your confidence. Like, what are the breakthroughs that you help your clients to achieve? List out the biggest results you have seen your clients achieve as a result of working with you. What are the deepest passions that you have as they relate to your business? But also it's good to just list all of them out. What are you really passionate about? What lights you up? What are the things that you could talk about for hours on end without stopping? Don't filter this. Don't be like, oh, well, that doesn't have to do with my business. Like if it's a passion you have, put it on there. Okay. I'll put this all in the chat. I know you guys are like, slow down. I'm going to copy and paste this in the chat for you. And for those watching the replay, I'll link this on the replay page. Okay. Now that you all have it in the chat, I'm an East Coaster. I talk really fast. What are the deepest passions that you have? Listing out your passions will help you get really present to the stories that you want to share. It'll help you get really present to who you align with, right? If you're really passionate about, Margie talks a lot about grief and loss and personal development, she's going to immediately hit it off and really connect with other people who are passionate about that. We're a podcast booking agency. We offer essentially a marketing service, but because she's sharing about that passion, we're able to actually attract and connect with clients that are in alignment with us for so much more than the service that we provide. Okay. If that makes sense. What is your vision for your company? What impact do you want to have on the world with your message? So having a vision for your company is really important. And you want to infuse your vision into your topics and your questions. So knowing what your vision is super, super important. So write that out. What are your convictions? What are your beliefs about your industry or the industry that you're in that may be polarizing or have people stop and want to listen? One of the things that we help our clients with when we're helping them with their one sheet copy is when a topic is so bland and it's like anyone in your business, in your industry could talk about this. So really think through like what makes you different. What are the things that you do in your business that are different from all of your competitors? Get really clear on that, because that's what's going to have you stand out to a host. Right. One of the things that we talk about that's on my one sheet is how we have a full-time in-house staff of employees and like why that's really important to us. We're in the online marketing space. All of our competitors, to my knowledge, have contractors. They outsource their booking and their pitching to 1099 contractors or people on Upwork that have no experience. And so we're like very vocal about how we have full-time employees with benefits who this is their career. And that makes a big difference on the service that we provide. So that's something that we talk about because it's a little bit polarizing, because a lot of online entrepreneurs like don't want anything to do with employees. They just want like freelancers because they're lone wolves. So that's something that we're really passionate about. That's a little bit polarizing in our space. So think about like, what is that for you? What is a little bit polarizing about what you do or how you do it? Because that's what people want to hear about, right? What are your clients' biggest pain points? And then what solutions do you have for those pain points? So this will take a little bit of time to kind of write out, but as you answer these questions, you'll have so much clarity on what really good suggested interview topics and questions should be. So I just want to give a couple of examples of interview topics that I helped our client Wendy write for her one sheet. So one example is the true cost of not having a financial plan. So that's something that just like catches your attention because people want to know what the true cost is. Another one is how to stop your brain from making you poor. That, again, it catches the attention of the person reading the one sheet because they're like, oh my God, is my brain making me poor? Like, how so? It's just, you want to think about things that are a little bit interesting. And then another one is red flags and family dynamics, how to tell if your kids are sabotaging your money. So writing interview topics that are a little bit interesting, that catch people's attention and also showcase the unique work that you do is super, super important. Oh, okay. So let me just see what questions we have here. How do you determine pain points? So Julie, you want to look at your clients and the people you work with when they come to you. What problems are you helping them solve? What's painful? So with our business, for example, we're getting people booked on podcasts to increase their visibility. So the pain point is often that they don't have enough leads. And because they don't have enough leads, they don't have predictable revenue in their business. And because they don't have predictable revenue, they're a little bit stressed about how they're going to continue to scale and grow. So you can kind of like start with like the top level pain point and then go deeper and deeper and deeper. I wouldn't worry about like how specific. I would just start listing them out. Just start brain dumping. Don't really filter this exercise. Okay, love it.
Yeah. As far as specificity, I would say, Julie, once you list them out, like Jess is saying, you'll have clarity on that.
Yeah.
Because if there's something really specific that 100% of your ideal clients have as a pain point, then you could get really specific. If it tends to be like a broader type of pain point, like for us, sometimes it's like visibility. Like clients come to us because they're in pain because they don't have enough visibility. And that could look like different things. It could look like not enough clients, it could look like being just reliant on referrals only, but not having an organic strategy. It could look like being reliant on Facebook ads with not enough organic leads. So it can look like different things. So I would say as specific as would be relevant so that when your ideal client hears it, they'll be like, that's me. If you get too specific and it's something that not all of your ideal clients have, they might not be able to hear themselves. But if you can get specific so that they're like, I feel like you're talking directly to me, that's always a good thing. So again, write it out. And this is not an exact science. Write it out, get on the court, start doing it, testing and tweaking. We tweak our clients' one sheets all the time because your messaging will evolve. And the more interviews you do, the faster that evolution goes of your messaging and the way you talk, which is very exciting.
I just want to add one thing, just to showcase how your topics can and will evolve. You know, for a long time, many years ago, I had a topic on my one sheet that was like top mistakes podcast hosts make or something like that, because I was talking a lot about podcasting. And then through trial and error, I realized nobody wanted to ask me that question because they were all podcast hosts interviewing me and they thought, I don't want to know if I'm making a mistake. So it's okay. I want to share that flaw and that failure that I made, because sometimes you do write a topic, you get out there, and then you learn from a very kind host that says, hey, you know, maybe don't have that on your one sheet, because maybe the host don't want to be embarrassed that they just made a mistake in front of you. And that's really interesting, because like I'll be interviewed about podcasting and people get a little nervous because they're like, I'm interviewing an expert about this. Like, I don't want to make any mistakes. So just remember that that might be happening for you. Someone's interviewing you about your expertise. So they might be a little bit nervous. So make sure your topics and questions are, not ones that they might not want to ask you about.
Yeah. And test it. Like you may come
Yeah.
up with a topic that you're like, this is so good. And on the court, it ends up not being good. Either hosts never ask it, or when they do ask it, it doesn't really like, it's not as exciting as a conversation as you thought. And then you'll end up tweaking it or changing it. And that's totally okay. All right. Telling stories. The more, and again, don't let this be something that stops you, but the more you can practice telling stories to answer questions and share your perspective. So it could be your origin story of your business, your personal story. There's tons of stories of client success, like case studies like that really illustrate the work that you do. The more you can tell stories, the better. And so I want to give an example. If someone asked me, what is the main mindset that really sets apart your most successful clients from clients who just have sort of average results with podcast guesting? I could say, well, the number one thing is that, they have a mindset to serve and they want to give a ton of value, and they approach every interview, and like the person paid money for it. Like they want to give so much value. That's kind of vague, right? 1 to 10, 1 being the least interesting. How interesting is that? I won't be offended. You can say in the chat, I think it's a 1. It's not interesting. It's true, right? But I'm just telling you that information. Okay, same question, but now I'm going to tell a story. We have a client named Kristen Bowen, who is a product-based business owner. She sells magnesium products. And we saw that she was getting incredible results, way bigger ROI than any of the other product-based businesses we were working with. She was just like blowing it out of the water. And we asked her, Kristen, what are you doing? Because clearly you're doing something differently. Clearly she's doing something, and we want to know so we can share it with all of our clients. And she said, every time I go on a podcast, I act like everyone in the audience paid $10,000 to hear me speak. Isn't that more impactful than the first thing I said? The information is the same. They're both equally true, but which one is going to stick with you? Which one are you actually going to remember? Probably the story about Kristen, rather than just remembering me say, you should do this. So that's what stories can do. That's the power of stories. So this, again, it's something you practice on the court, but looking at when you're answering your questions, looking at your suggested topics and questions on your one sheet, how can I answer this by showing instead of telling? How can I tell a story that shows this rather than just saying it? So looking at those opportunities, finding those opportunities, creating those opportunities, you will get better and better at doing this, but being intentional about it is really important. If you aren't used to this, you can write out your stories. So we're talking about writing out your topics and questions for your one sheet. You can also write out the stories that those topics and questions are going to tee up for you. So you know that they're going to ask something about founding your business. So get that story ready. You know that they're going to ask some of the questions on your one sheet. So what stories are you going to tell to answer those questions? You can write them out. You can practice them. And again, these are off the cuff conversations. It's improv. You're not going to memorize what you've written out. You're not going to read what you've written out, but it can be really helpful in the beginning to practice writing them out or to practice saying them to a friend or to a family member to build up your confidence with storytelling. Mistakes I see people making is they just kind of breeze over stuff, right? They're just like, okay, you should do this, instead of really digging in and telling a story that shows why they should do this. I think a lot of this comes from nervousness, because when you're first getting out there, you're nervous, you don't want to talk too much, and you don't feel as comfortable really digging in. So I would challenge you, even though you're nervous, to take a deep breath, create that space, and go into these stories. Don't be tempted to just rush along. The other thing, is just like details. So what details are important? Again, this is something about writing stuff out. So when there are stories I tell all the time. Losing my dad, I tell that story all the time. I tell it a little bit different every single time. So sometimes I'll give details that I don't give other times. I'll drop them into different points of the story. Like sometimes I'll drop them into right before he died. Sometimes I'll drop them into what it was like finding out. Like, play around with this stuff. And again, this has to happen on the court, but don't make the mistake of breezing over your stories because you think you're boring or because you're nervous.
Yeah, absolutely. There's planning to do, right? There's writing out the stories that could support each one of your topics and questions. And then there's stories that you'll share that you never planned on sharing, but a host decided to ask you a question and you're like, I've never shared this before, but let's go. And then you share it, right? And so I just want to give a tip around that, because sometimes you're like, okay, I just remembered this. I honestly forgot about it until you asked me that question. Take a deep breath. Like, take a deep breath. Not every story is going to be prepared, and you're not going to have bullet points for everything because you're on live, you're on a podcast. You can't be like, wait, I need to go write it out first. Take a deep breath. Take your time. Stories are more powerful when they're shared in a more intentional pace than you just rushing through it.
I just love such good information in the comments. Dig into the story. Don't rush it. You might have told the story 100 times. The audience has heard it only once. That's huge. And I think that's such a good point, because that's another reason that people rush through their stories. You've told it so many times that you're like, yeah, this happened. Because but they're hearing it for the first time. Such a good point.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, the next aspect of delivering a brand strengthening interview, where we've said it once and we'll say it again, serve and give real value. So Margie shared the story about Kristen, really having the mindset as if everyone in the audience has paid $10,000 to hear you speak. If you truly go into every interview with the feeling that everyone's paid to hear the interview, you will show up differently, right? If you have ever been paid to speak or paid to give a training, you are going to take the time to prepare for that, right? You're not just going to wing it because it's a little thing. Like, you're really going to take it so much more seriously. Podcast interviews are not a sales pitch for your business. This is really, really important. If you're here in this masterclass because being interviewed on podcasts is a new strategy and you're not really sure how it works and you're here learning, please hear me when I say these interviews are not an infomercial. These interviews are not an infomercial about your services and products. Some of them will turn into infomercials when the host is really interested in what you do. I've definitely had interviews where the host is like, so how do your services work? Because we have this business that, we were first to market. So sometimes actually it does. And I'm like, oh, that was convenient. But you never go into an interview thinking, oh, I'm going to go on here and sell my service. You are there to provide value first and foremost.
All right. Last point. This is a big one. So if you've been tuning us out, first of all, don't do that. Watch the replay because this is important. But this is a really big topic that I'm now going to hit on, but it makes such a big difference. So I did interviews for years, and we did not have a clear company vision. Like, we had not written out, this is our vision statement as a company. And I still got clients from the interviews. Like, they were great. It's not that the interviews were bad, but when we really got, and this was, I think, in 2020, the importance of creating an intentional vision statement of who this company is in the world, I saw an immediate shift in my interviews. The quality, the energy of them just changed. And it's not because I was like reading the vision statement on the interviews. It usually doesn't come up. Like I never really say our vision statement, but by getting clear behind the scenes on our purpose, on our why, it just changed. It infused that into every conversation I had, both with podcast hosts, on my own podcast, in our videos, in our written content. It just changes everything. It changes the quality of it when you're clear on your vision. So we created our vision statement. And I want to share it with you. And I also want to share a couple examples of client vision statements. So if you don't have a vision statement as a company or a mission statement, I want to encourage you to create it today. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can keep evolving and changing it. But that moment of you tapping back into who your company is in the world, the impact that it's out to have, changes everything. So our vision statement, before we had a vision statement, we were just like, well, this is what we do. We book entrepreneurs on podcasts so that they can get more visibility and get more clients. That's true, but that's not a vision statement. That is just the tactics of what our company does. We went deeper. What are we actually doing? Why is it actually important to us? What's the true impact on the lives and businesses of our clients? After asking that question, we came up with to keep leading and creating the industry with the highest quality and most innovative service in the world, to transform the lives of entrepreneurs by transforming their business with visibility and strategy, and to amplify the voices of entrepreneurs who embody integrity, authenticity, leadership, and kindness. So we have a 3-part vision statement, and that last part has changed everything for us. All of it has. But when we really got clear about the impact that we were having, about the responsibility of amplifying voices and what voices are we choosing to amplify, it changed everything. It changed how we chose who we worked with. We turn people away. We tell people, sorry, you're not a good fit for us. We're not comfortable amplifying your voice and your message because we're not aligned with it. When you get that type of clarity, you attract people you are aligned with like crazy. And it just is infused in every conversation you have, including your podcast interviews. I want to give another example. So we have an amazing client named Jyotsna. She is the owner of Happy Self Publishing. She does an incredible job helping coaches and consultants write their book, publish their book. And when we started working with Jyotsna, she was in a similar position that we had been in. She didn't have a vision statement. When we asked her vision statement, it was very tactical, right? It was like, I help coaches and consultants write their book and get their book published, which is fine. That's accurate. But when we really asked her, like, but why? Why do you do this? Why are you passionate about it? What is the impact that you're having on your client? What is the impact that they're having through these books? And when she really reflected on that and dove deep, she came up with a new vision statement, and you could just hear the difference. Like you could hear that she was like giving herself chills with it. And when she said it, we got chills too. And it had such a different quality. So her new vision statement was to elevate the consciousness of humanity one book at a time and be the leading book publishing agency for purpose-driven entrepreneurs. The power of really looking at, what am I doing here? Why is this actually important? What is the impact it's having on my clients and on the world? Taking the time to reflect on that and to write it out will add a quality to your interviews that is very hard to pin down and name, but it's so powerful, and it makes all the difference. When people hear you, working with you occurs as an opportunity. They want to be part of what you're doing.
Yeah, so I'll give another example. Nikita Wren Thigpen is another amazing client of ours, and her vision is to create the sacred space for growth, vulnerability, balance, and relationships, unbound by limitations and amplified with intimate solutions for powerful problems. So the power, as Margie has shared, when you have this clear vision statement, I think someone actually said in the chat as well, it really becomes your guiding light, right? It really becomes your guiding light and helps make a lot of decisions so much easier. So what is your vision? So once you're clear on your vision, how do you infuse it into your interviews? So you want to, and this is, again, this is one of the reasons that knowing what your vision is one of the prompts I gave you with your interview topics and questions, because once you write it out, it will be so clear. You'll be able to look at your one sheet and say, well, am I being set up with my topics and my questions to talk about this? Like, are there opportunities on my, are there topics and questions on my one sheet to tee me up to talk about how we're very specific about who we work with? We cancel clients who are unkind or hateful, or will turn people away who aren't aligned with what we're not aligned with their message, right? So how are you infusing your vision? It's looking at what is your vision, what are your values, and do your interview topics and questions provide space for you to communicate about them?
Yeah, we have some great questions. Would you include your vision statement on your one sheet? I don't. Again, it sort of gets infused. So when you clarify your vision statement first and then create your topics and questions, it's infused into it and it's infused into the conversation. So I don't think you have to have it explicitly on your website or on your one sheet. I have a personal mission statement. This needs to be built into a clear vision statement of my business. Martin, I love that you said that, because this is the thing, right? And when you're a business owner, especially in the beginning, there's not a big distinction between you and your company. You are the company. And what was really helpful for us in 2020, when we realized we needed to clarify this, was to think about ourselves as separate from it. So who is this company in the world? If it's a self-led company, or we're not the owners anymore in the future, who do we want to see this business being? And it's kind of painful and hard. And I'm not saying you have to sell your company or you won't always be the owner. Maybe you will be, maybe you want to be, and that's great. But try to separate your company from yourself and say, who is this company in the world? And that is so powerful. So I love that you said that. That is really different. And honestly, I have a personal vision, like a personal mission statement that is related, but slightly different than the business. My personal vision statement is the Mother Teresa quote: find someone who believes that they're alone and convince them that they're not. That's like my North Star. That's my guiding light in everything I do. And you can see how much that plays into the business, right? Because by people sharing on podcasts and sharing their story, it reminds listeners that they're not alone. It's so, so powerful, but they're not the exact same thing. So you are not your company. They're separate things. And having a vision for the company in addition to your personal vision is really, really powerful. All right, homework tonight. Either Matt or Sammy is your best friend for this masterclass. You probably know by now. If you don't, email support@interviewconnections.com to find out who your concierge is. It will be either Matt or Sammy. Your homework is to create a vision statement and message it to Matt and Sammy. So we've given you a lot of guidance here about how it could look, but you have total freedom here. And remember, it can evolve and change. It does not have to be perfect, but send that vision statement to Matt and Sammy. Trust me, this is really important. Tomorrow, we're going to get into monetization, 12 p.m. Eastern time. We're back tomorrow. We're going to talk about getting clients from your interview. Don't skip this vision statement step. I'm telling you, it is powerful. It will set you apart from competitors, from other people in your industry when you are grounded in this vision and in this why. So tonight or tomorrow morning before we're live again at 12, make sure you do your homework. Send that vision statement to Matt or Sammy. And again, tomorrow, 12 p.m. Eastern time, we will see you here. And we're going to be talking all about closing sales from your podcast interviews. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.